My name is Vickie Hilton, and I'm from Durant, Oklahoma. And after 30 years of being a hardcore unbeliever, I found Jesus, and my life has been radically changed since that moment. I used to be the person who couldn't stand to be around Christians. If I walked into business and they were playing Christian music, I turned around and walked out. If people offered me prayer, I would say, don't bother, don't waste your breath. I was pretty hateful. I was very unhappy. I was broken and wounded. And I spent many, many years living my life in anger and in hate. And just actually looking back, I was in despair because I thought this life was all there was. And there was nothing afterwards. And to live in that, to live your life like that, it's just a pretty terrible thing. My husband and I were headed for divorce. We were already talking divorce. We'd had this horrible day where things kind of just exploded. And we said horrible, horrible things to each other. And so we were going to get a divorce. We were still living in the same home. I was in a waiting list for an apartment. And he came to me one day and he said, listen, I'm willing to go to marriage counseling if you are. And I had tried to get him to in the past, and he was unwilling. And I was or I thought anyway, I was done. But I said, if you make an appointment, if you do it, tell me the time and place and I'll show up. So he made an appointment. And when it came to the day of the appointment, it was out at the hotel, at the casino. And I was like, what kind of an appointment have you made for us? What is this? Because no one, and it was on a Saturday. I was like, okay, no one does marriage counseling on a Saturday, and they don't do it in a hotel. What have you done? I was very irritated with him, but we went. And we walked in there and went up to the receptionist and said, we have this appointment for marriage counseling. And she's like, what? Are you here for a meeting upstairs? And we were like, no. And I gave her the name, and she said, oh, you have a meeting with the chaplain. And I was like, we do? And I looked at my husband, and, he kind of looked at me, and she said, just have a seat and he'll be here in a minute. And so we went out and we sat down in the lobby, and my husband looked at me and he goes, well, do you want to leave? Because normally I would have. And of course, there was a guiding thing going on that we didn't know about, this accidental appointment. I was like, let's hear what he has to say. And so when we went into his office, and I told him right off the bat, I was like, I really don't know how we got this appointment with you. I don't know how this came about. We actually found out more recently about even more how kind of a miracle it was we got that appointment. But I was like, I don't know. I'm a non-believer. I do not believe in God. I'm against this sort of stuff. And he said, well, if you guys decide to continue to do counseling with me, it will be, Christian based. There'll be some biblical stuff. And he said, I'll send you some worksheets home. And he pulled up a video clip of Pastor Duane. And he said, this is my pastor, Pastor Duane. And he played I can't tell you what the clip was or anything. He just played a couple of minutes of it. And he was like, you'd really like him. And, and I'd like to invite you guys to go to Victory Life Church if you would. And he gave us a Bible. He prayed before we left. And he told us, he said, you're going to remember this day. And he put the date in the Bible. But the whole time I'm thinking, yeah, right, whatever. Because I didn't feel changed. I thought, I had in my head, if you have this encounter, that it should be like, whoa. I was just the whole time he was praying, I wasn't even listening really. I was just sitting there thinking, whatever. And so we left, but then on the way home, I asked my husband, I said, well, because this was Saturday, I said, well, do you want to go to church tomorrow? And he nearly drove off the road because I was, like I said, I was so against it. He's like, do you want to go to church tomorrow? And so we did. We went to Victory Life Church, and you could tell immediately when you walked in the door, it was a different place. It was a completely different atmosphere. In fact, we got a free drink for your first trip, and we got our drink, and we sat down out there, and people were just, talking and laughing and fellowshipping. And I looked at my husband, I said, man, these people are happy. And he said, I know something must be wrong. Well, then the first time I heard Brother Duane, I was changed. He talked about the love of God and how God loves you. And I had never, ever heard anyone talk about God that way. Everything I had ever heard was the fire and the brimstone, and I had never, ever heard anyone talk about how much God loves you. It doesn't matter about all of this other stuff. It's just the love of God. And I walked out of that church that day a changed person.